Like I said very clearly last week in Aix-la-Chapelle, these topics are sovereignty tests for Europe. The issue is whether we can have some sovereign choices and strategic guidelines on which we decide by ourselves without any dependence whatsoever. This is something I very much called upon, and I consider that we had a positive discussion last night, given that the positions taken both on Iran and on trade were clear and strong on behalf of the European Union. On trade, we've been extremely explicit. There can be no discussions on the details with the United States unless we have, ahead of that, a full exemption. If the Americans want to comply with the multilateral rules and continue to work with their allies, then we can talk together about reforming the WTO, dealing with overcapacity, the topics I've been discussing a number of times over the past few weeks. Otherwise, Europe, in compliance with the rules of the WTO, will respond in order to defend its interests. Then there is the topic of Iran, which is also a matter of European sovereignty. The discussion we had yesterday followed a very intense discussion with the United Kingdom and Germany, as well as the meeting organized with Madame Mogherini and the European Minister of Foreign Affairs, together with those of Iran and Russia. Our intention is to preserve with Iran the accord signed in 2015 and to protect the interests of our companies. So the European choice is clearly to confirm that we want to stay within the agreement of 2015, but also, like France said on the occasion of the UN General Assembly in September 2017, we want to open up the discussion regarding the future of the nuclear activities, the ballistical activities of Iran, and the regional role of Iran in Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, and Iraq. We already started working on these topics with the ministers, and also when I discussed the matter with President Rouhani, and we will continue along those lines as agreed yesterday. The European Commission has proposed, first of all, the update of the 1996 regulation and the support of the European Investment Bank. These are suggestions that we supported in order to move forward quickly. These initiatives are not only important within the context of the Iran issue, but it is also important in order to reinforce the position of Europe, and this is very much in coherence with the French agenda and the measures, the protective measures we adopted last summer for strategic sectors. Europe shall be strong in case of tensions, but we also need to work on other topics, including on the digital sector. And France and Germany put forward some proposals a couple of weeks ago, and these enabled some proposals to be made on innovation, on the way to finance a breakthrough innovation. This is something I announced in my speech at the Sorbonne, and it was taken on board in the proposals made by France and Germany, and it is now being supported by all the member states and the European Commission. The Commission has decided to implement such measures, and to that effect to put in place an experimentation within the context of the existing budget, which I believe is a very strong and positive signal. Lastly, today we had a discussion about the Western Balkans. On this topic, only a couple of minutes ago, we had a very clear, very specific discussion with all of the relevant member states. Some are in a negotiation phase, others are aspiring to open negotiations. We talked about connectivity and security. and some very concrete projects which France is supporting for the purpose of improving the digital accessibility, developing the infrastructures, and some other initiatives in order to work on security and to tackle crime on the internet. Many of these projects have been approved and signed today, and they will be further developed on the occasion of the summit to be held in London this summer with the Western Balkans. And we'll get back to all of these. Please allow me to be extremely clear here we go as to France's stance vis-à-vis the Western Balkans. And France's stance, I believe, fits within the European project, which is that of France today. We would like Europe to be more sovereign and more united. For Europe to be more sovereign, we need to acknowledge the European prospect of the Western Balkans. The Western Balkans are a region which is very much at the heart of Europe, which is being destabilized, pressured to, and given the history of the region and given the existing pressures, these countries could turn to Russia or to Turkey. And I think this would be a wrong solution both for the region and for Europe. This is the reason why we need to continue to work on our sovereignty by anchoring the Western Balkans, within the European Union, and to do it strongly and with a clear strategy, which I very much wanted to express once again. Next, this cannot be done with a lack of coherence and unity. If we were to open new negotiations without any precondition, that would not be serious to do so. I said, accordingly, that we should move forward, but taking on board the constraints of each country. First of all, we shall confirm the European prospect, and we shall gratify with the leaders who are reforming their countries. And a number of them have been undertaking reforms over the past few months. I have in mind Serbia and Montenegro, which are already negotiating. I also have in mind Macedonia and Albania, which are aspiring to negotiating. But today we cannot open up new negotiations without any precondition. And the Commission is pointing out the fight against corruption or migration issues, which still need improvement before we can open some new formal negotiations for the purpose of joining the European Union. I think this is a matter of seriousness, and it is also a sign of respect for the countries willing to apply. So yes to the prospect, but we shall look into the conditions in June on the meeting or the next meeting of the European Council. Lastly, as to the final act of joining the European Union, this can only be possible if there is ahead of it a reform of the European Union. We can see that already with 27 or 28 countries, the European Union is no longer in a position to take some major decisions unless we work under the pressure of some crisis. So we need to modernize the European Union and the Eurozone before opening up to any new member. In the meantime, and that is the purpose of this summit, we need to strengthen our concrete cooperation, including in the field of connectivity, security, infrastructure. And it is on this agenda that I would like to work together with all of the European Union members, and also in the with the Western Balkans, and also in the context of the bilateral relations that we have with each of the Western Balkan countries. So this is very much a summary of the discussions that we've had last night and today. Please allow me to thank the Bulgarian presidency and Prime Minister Boyko for organizing this summit and for the commitment of the Bulgarian presidency from the very beginning on topics which accordingly we were able to move forward. We had a frank discussion today about the Western Balkans, this is a good illustration. We're now working on finalizing some agreements on migration flows on the Eurozone, on foreign workers as well, and I would like to thank the Bulgarian presidency for that. You now have the floor. Mr. President, sir, good afternoon. A question from the Bulgarian press. A few minutes ago, the Prime Minister said in the presence of the press that in the context of the meetings you had, you've been able to talk about Schengen, the Eurozone, and the situation of Bulgaria in this respect. Bulgaria is currently presiding over the European Union. Can you tell us more? Can you commit to any specific date as to the entry of Bulgaria in the Schengen area? And what about MCE2? You just mentioned a number of topics which are of importance for Bulgaria, and I very much would like us to move forward on these topics. This is in compliance with the spirit of cooperation that I very much share with Prime Minister Borisov, and in compliance as well with the commitments that I made. There's something that you did not mention. It is the mobility package, which is a highly sensitive topic in Bulgaria. And on this, I would like us to be able to reach a compromise over the next few months. In this respect, France has made some clear commitment. We have been asking for a clear revamp of the Posted Workers Directive. This was very important, and it's being done. Next, we always wanted the specificities of the road transport sector to be taken on board. My target is to reach an agreement by September 2018, a balanced agreement, so that we can offer some fair competition, proper social protection, and a fair agreement by the time. Regarding Schengen, like I said on a number of occasions, we've already done a lot of work. It is being acknowledged. And please allow me to pay tribute to the work done by Bulgaria when it comes to returning people to the borders. And this is under the authority of Prime Minister Borisov. Next, we need to talk about the current the way Schengen currently operates. And it would not be a good thing either for Bulgaria or for the current members of Schengen to commit hastily, given that we're still in the process of changing the rules of Schengen, or this is our wish. I would like, within 6 months, I would like us to reform Schengen, Dublin, and all the rules about migration and free movement of people, so that then, within a better context, we can talk about the possibility of Bulgaria joining Schengen. So I'm saying it very clearly, while acknowledging the quality of the work done by Bulgaria, which is very much facing up to its responsibilities in the field. Lastly, the Eurozone. There is the MCE mechanism, which is somehow a step towards the Eurozone. If Bulgaria meets the criteria, seems to be the case today, France wishes Bulgaria to be able to enter the MCE mechanism and then the banking union, which means that the Bulgarian banking system can then be fully monitored. The work to be conducted in the coming weeks together with the European Central Bank are of the utmost importance, I believe. I therefore would like us to move forward in accordance with the existing rules, and technically, based on the opinion of all of the experts, the conditions apparently are met for Bulgaria to join the ECM. But I would like this to be done at the same time on Schengen and together in agreement with the ECB. question. Total and a number of other major French companies are saying that they will leave Iran unless they get some exemption, a clear exemption from the United States. And Iran already said that there is a Chinese company that stood ready to step in should Total leave Iran. So how can you help European companies? Are you applying for exemptions on a case-by-case basis? Is it the case that the Russian and the Chinese companies might save the deal, whereas the European companies may not be in a position to stay? And well, when you talk about success or failure, it's important who would be the winner and who. I believe that France has been shouldering its responsibilities from the very beginning in this crisis. We've been taking initiatives and we've been speaking the truth. So the worst risk would be not to do anything. So when we take an initiative, we might succeed or we might fail. But I believe that we've been doing our utmost to explain and to convince that it was the wrong thing to do, to walk away from the JCPOA. But the success of the French diplomacy is not its ability for it to decide on behalf of others. So to be clear on that topic, I believe that consider that our role is to guarantee the stability and peace in the region. So our first interest is not a trade interest, it's not a business one, it's not that of the companies, it is not about supporting one group or another in the region, it is to guarantee stability. And our problem is in the region is that until 2015, there was a country that was getting closer to nuclear weapons and could destabilize the region. We have Iran, which is still destabilizing the region and threatening some of our allies, including Israel. So we should face it. Against this background, the 2015 agreement is a good one because it enables to improve things and to better control the nuclear defense activities of Iran. And as a matter of fact, the country has stopped what they were doing before the agreement was signed. Since the summer of 2017, I clearly said that this agreement was not enough, even though France had signed it. I said we should also cover post-2025 nuclear activities, the regional role and the ballistical activities. This is what I said at the United Nations. On this basis, I tried to convince the United States to change its strategy and to open up to these other three topics. And this is what I offered in Washington, D.C. I offered a new framework. This is where we stand. We did not convince them so far, but France, but Germany and the United Kingdom have joined France. So our interest is to say once again that the JCPOA is one step and that we should not abandon it. And precisely if Iran complies with the agreement and does not resume its nuclear activities, it is a contribution to our goal, which is stabilization. And we're not, but that being said, we're not going to take side with either the US or Iran. We will not take side with Iran against the United States of America. That would be a terrible mistake. We just want to contribute to build trust in the region and to prevent escalation. Against this background, there is the trade topic. And what I would like us to do is to be able to provide the conditions for all the businesses that would like to stay in Iran to be able to do so. And the Commission is working on that. But there are two limits. First of all, we are not going to launch trade and strategic war against American companies. based on what is happening in Iran. That would not make sense, because the goal, once again, is to get this broad agreement, including with the signature of the United States. The second thing is that we're not going to impose French businesses to stay in Iran. The French president is not the CEO of Total. I would like French businesses to have a possibility of staying, depending on the relevance of the Iran market. But the CEO of Total is defending their own interest, and it is for them to make their own decision, to compare the risks for them in Saudi Arabia, in the United States, depending on what they may or may not be doing in Iran. But it would be a mistake for the President of the French Republic to require them to do something and to stay. From the very beginning, anyway, they've had an agreement with a Chinese partner in Iran. So I consider that my role, from a strategic point of view, is to protect our sovereignty, to contribute to peace in the region. But the responsibility of the French president is not to decide upon the United States or on behalf of Total. This is not the way it works. As to the indirect consequences of the American decision, this is my conviction, is that this will help, this will play the game of Russia and China in the region. Can Europe act as quickly in the region in terms of strategy and trade? No, because France and Europe, we have a partnership with the United States. And even though we disagree, we are not going to tear apart our partnership with the United States and act as China or Russia. We have to take into account all the circumstances. So yes, in the short term, this may work for the benefit of China or Russia, but for me it is not a matter of simply a matter of trade and access to contracts in Iran. It is rather a way of opening up Iran. And if you look at the JCPOA,
the French President Emmanuel Macron speaking at the EU Leaders Summit in Bulgaria.